Crumple up that piece of paper and throw your doubts and fears away. Unleash your artistic potential with these quick sketching exercises designed to boost your creativity. In this video, we'll show you simple yet effective techniques to get your creative juices flowing and overcome that roadblock. Warm up your brain with these exercises and prompts that'll challenge and guide you to become a better drawer. We have created a 15-minute art routine and have established it as a habit. Now comes the fun part. Today we have 3 exercises to help you with the basic of drawing and sketching that help establish your line control and start seeing the world in a new light. If you didn't know, welcome to McGregor Collective, a place to experiment new and creative ideas with a community of like-minded artists establishing good habits. If you like it so far, don't forget to like and subscribe to follow for more. Okay, so there are a couple different aspects of a line that you may need to know. First, we need to know that there is literally a physical line. So let's grab a blank piece of paper. So this blank piece of paper kind of just represents surface, just basically your playing space that you get to do. So there is, of course, physical line. Literally, you gotta start and you gotta finish. A line is defined by the length and width. So there can be different types of lines. You're thinking, Nathan, well, I know this. Yes, I know this, but it's just a good thing just to kind of get an understanding, to get more of the technical knowledge. If you want to get to more of that technical knowledge and that technique, we can start by the very basics. And this is the very basics. But then what you can go is you have different lines. So you got the long line, and then you got short lines. It's to throw away that fear that art is so hard that you can't do anything else. Art is very simple. So within that length of lines, you got the shorter, and then you got the long. And then what you can do is within a line, you can make it broken or unbroken. So kind of like the dots. So doot, 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 or small ones. You can see a little bit better sometimes with paint. You can see the differences between a paint because it can become uneven and there's some streaking involved depending on what type of paint you use, sometimes like with watercolor or with oil. And then what is another fascinating thing you can do when you start thinking about lines is take your pencil if you're following along with me, but you can make out the thickness. So you can be very thick with your art, with your lines, move in different types of weight. So you can have really small to very large. And then within lines can then create movement. Sometimes when you look at a piece of art or a photo, you can see that there is some sort of visual eye movement within the piece. That is usually because of the lines that have created this piece. Within these lines, within these 3 different types of movements of lines, we can then create different types of feelings and emotions within your painting. And I think that's a great segue into thinking about how lines can create emotion. There's a fun little activity we can do, and I would like you to write down happy, and then a little box. And then I want you to write down peaceful. And then I want you to pick 3 out of the 4 words I'm going to say. Sad, fragile, dangerous, soft, and angry. I am going to do fragile. I am going to do angry. And then I am going to do soft. Within those boxes, think of how would you make the lines look happy? How would you make the lines look peaceful? How would you make the lines angry? For me, happy. Happy, I think, really comes with some like curves. I mean, you can even think of literally smiley face. Peaceful lines. I think I'm gonna do it more like this. When you think of peaceful lines, what are the images that come up when you think of that? Like, I think of like an ocean scene or mountain scene or, and if you notice that those typically are more that horizontal lines. So you kind of have this expectation that the longer lines are a little bit more peaceful. Well, I think of just like broken pieces, small little things like that. little dots here and there that's fragile, or either just very skinny. I think of very skinny line. And then angry, I think of really like dark bolts and like raw. It's kind of crazy how what you think of is when you start thinking, how can I make this line look different emotions? That's another great little tool and activity you can do. Activity is just a great starting point just to think about what do lines create and what emotions do they convey. And I think it's a good thing just to think about as I think about soft. We do have that vertical lines typically express that tension and power, and it's an ascent, you're going up, it's energy, a lot of energy. And when you think of horizontal lines, like I was talking about, that peaceful, you kind of have more of calming, it's more of a slumber, it's a little bit more boring. And then when you get these broken and diagonal lines that you have within your pieces, you express this movement, this action, and this dynamic feeling within the artwork. And then these, when you go into more of the curvy waves, you get more of like happiness and relaxation, and just works with different types of line work. Just think of that and how those lines really truly help you understand a movement and of the piece. And I think that's where we get into the connection with shape. Shapes are so important to our drawing, and lines do create that shape for you. So you can't really say anything about line with a shape without lines. And so when we define our shapes, it helps us communicate our desires and our creativity, our imagination, our logic, our information. It gives us that structure. Okay, grabbing pens is great. And it forces us to deal with possible mistakes we think are mistakes. Let me see if this works. Yep, it does. Okay, so get your straight edge. I'm gonna use a piece of paper. Divide up your paper into little quadrants. You can do it freehand, but just enough, because we're looking for some space. Okay. You need enough space where you can show different types of value. On this top one, we're gonna write hatching. We're gonna go through different techniques we can create value through lines. And very simple lines is cross hatching. These labels that I'm putting up on boxes: circulism, contour, stippling, short dashes. We're gonna do, I'm just gonna say the numbers. Pick a number or a wavy, and then zigzags. So are going to be those dark parts, and you're going to go from dark from one corner into this corner. It's going to be light or white for the hatching. Hatching is just one straight line. Typically hatching is just from the top down, from the top down, from the top down. So let's do that. I am going to do at a diagonal because I am going from dark to light. So there we go. It's very dark. That even with a pen, there are some unique differences of texture you can get when you have a pen. It's not exactly even all the way. I sometimes like just drawing with pen because it has a unique, different texture because of the ball, depending on if you have ball or if it's a gel. There you go. So that's a hatching from dark, and if you want to, you can go over again. Start drawing is you want to work with the tools that you have and see what the limits are. And sometimes having these small little exercises can really show you what you want to do. So now we're going to do cross hatching. Cross hatching is like hatching right here, but now you're just going to do the cross. So let us go from this way. I'm going to hatch one way. Now I'm going to do the other way. This is the hard part sometimes. With pen, you kind of have to let it go. And when you cross hatch, notice the closer you get between both lines, the darker it gets, you perceive, and the further away you get from the lines, the darker it gets. So I like usually hatching multiple times. Some people don't. But when you start drawing, you start hatching different times as a different technique to get it darker, because the different ways you get different variations. So, Okay, you see there's the little blots. That's okay. That's kind of like the fun of using pen, because you do get a little blob sometimes. Now circulism or circles. So we're going to use the shape of a circle, and we're using multiple different circles to get from the dark to the light. Okay, you got it? So you don't have to use, you don't want to scribble. We're using circles, maybe messy circles. Large circles, small circles. When you do larger circles, see the amount of space you get in between the lines. So if you notice, the smaller you get and more closer and dense they get, the darker you get. Now contouring. Contouring is similar to hatching. Contouring is typically following the shape. Instead of using straight lines, you are using a curve. Remember to be parallel, evenly parallel from one another to get that light and dark variation. Yeah, I need practice with this too. So, I might want to go in. Contouring, scribbling, just scribble. You probably think about it now, like, why am I doing this? This seems kind of ridiculous, but you want to see what you're doing and what your tools can do and what other techniques you can do when you are painting or drawing to get different techniques. A fundamental is usually you find yourself drawing before you paint. Having a good sense of how to draw is typically a good sign of how to paint. Not necessarily all the case, because then when in color, in painting you get a little bit different variation when you add color. Right now we're using the black and white scale. And stippling is just dots, basically. So you're stippling. This one will probably take longer because depending on how thick your marker is, will be longer. I remember I did a project that was stippling, and I picked, of course, the most complex picture to do, and it took me forever to finish. And I don't think it's actually finished, but I highly recommend trying to do simple objects first. See, it takes a while to do this, and it's kind of annoying. It's also kind of relaxing at some points. So, okay, stippling. Okay, that's as much as I'm gonna do. You can do more if you want, because I have to get on. All right, now short dashes, using kind of like the same thing with hatches, but instead of these long lines, we're gonna do these, remember, these short lines. So, starting from the dark, and you can do either way. Let's try this way. I'm gonna do it, actually, no, let's do it long ways. So think about like these different techniques of when are you gonna use like short dashes? When are you gonna use the stippling? When are you gonna use like the scribbles or using a circulism? They call it circulism. I don't know if I like that word, but I like just using circles to show shading and perspective. And if you're like, this is too much for me, hey, just start with hatching and see what you can do. Because remember, if this is all you do for your art practice today, then that is great. We want you to get into the habit of creating or making art. To crumple that fear that you have because you think you're not an artist, and to start. Because it's all in that mindset that first time. So if it gets too much, take a break, get some coffee, put some music on, and relax. That's what it's supposed to be. Fun. There we go, short dashes. That was a hard one. So now we can either do pick a number and just make it light dark, or you can do a wave. So I'm gonna do waves. Wave. Zigzags. So zigzag, very similar to wave. You're just Actually, it's about the same. So, get to this point, you don't have to do this. I'm doing it just because I want to. But in this one, I am doing closer and a little bit more of a darker shade. The next one is that blending, but I don't want to do that one yet. I want to wait until we get the next time to get an understanding of that value. Because I think when you start blending, people go directly to blending before you think about doing the hatching and the circles or the contouring, just as from the perspective of trying to utilize those tools before we get into the shading, because shading can be a lot of fun, but blending can be a lot of fun, but I think getting an understanding of where your tool is at and how dark it can get with just simple techniques as hatching or cross hatching really helps you with your making. Wiggle your hands, stretch out your hands, whatever you want to do. Go grab some coffee using different types of techniques. Let me know what techniques you did. Hopefully this was really enjoyable for you, and you can take these small moments to capture your environment by looking at the shapes and lines that you start seeing in your daily artist habit. Stay curious.